Right now, a few million people are taking a personality test they will have forgotten by Friday. They will screenshot the result. They will send it to one friend. That's it. Then there's you. You got 4 letters back, and something in you went very quiet. Not because the letters were flattering, because it was the first time anything had described the thing you'd been carrying since you were about 9 years old and had no word for. And then everyone told you the same thing. Rare. 1%. The rarest type there is. Stay with me, because the letters were never the discovery. Rare feels like an answer, doesn't it? It isn't. Rare is a compliment. It explains nothing about your Tuesday or about why you needed the whole evening off after a 40-minute lunch. So today we're going to look at what is actually inside those 4 letters. Not the mystique, the mechanism. And the mechanisms explains your exhaustion far better than the rarity ever did. Start with the night you found it. It's late. The room is dark and your face is lit by a phone. You're reading a description of a personality type and your thumb keeps slowing down, and somewhere around the 3rd paragraph your throat gets tight. You are not a person who cries at internet quizzes. You're not crying. But you read it twice. Here's something you should know about that moment. In 1948, a psychologist named Bertram Forer handed his students what he told them were personal profiles built from a test they had taken. He asked them to rate how accurate it was. Almost everyone rated it as an excellent fit. Every single student had received the exact same paragraph, and Forer had assembled it out of an astrology column. That's called the Barnum effect, and it's the reason vague personality descriptions feel handmade. Now, this is usually the part where someone tells you your type is fake and you should feel a little silly for caring. That's not where I'm going, because the Barnum effect explains why a vague line lands. It does not explain the specific line that made you put your phone face down on your stomach and stare at the ceiling. It doesn't explain why you scrolled past all the flattering parts, looking for the section about why you disappear for 3 days after a party. Something was already there. The test didn't install it. Think of it this way. The test handed you a cardboard box with 4 letters written on the side in marker. It did not put anything in that box. You had been carrying the box for 20 years. All the letters did was give you something to call it, so you could finally point at it in front of other people. So let's open the thing. Your friend introduces you to someone she's seeing. You are 3 sentences into the conversation when you already know how this ends, and roughly when. You don't say it. What would you even say? 9 months later, she's calling you at 11 at night, and you feel absolutely no satisfaction about being right. You feel tired. That's the first item in the box, and it isn't magic. It's pattern learning that happens under the floor of your awareness. Researchers have studied this for decades. In experiments run by the psychologist Paul Lewicki, people were exposed to sequences that followed a complicated hidden rule. Over time, their responses got faster and more accurate. They were learning the rule. But when the researchers asked them what the rule was, they couldn't say. They had the accuracy and none of the explanation. That's you at the dinner table. You have a read and no receipt. So when someone asks how you know, all you have is that you just have a feeling about it. And the room hears that as you making things up. Maybe once or twice someone said you were being dramatic or paranoid or that you overthink people. So you learn to keep the read behind your teeth. It shows up at work too. Somebody presents a plan in a meeting and you can see the hole in it. Not because you're clever. Because you've watched this exact shape of confidence go wrong twice before. You sit on your hands. You say it looks solid. And 6 weeks later, when it falls apart the way you knew it would, you don't say anything then either. Notice what that costs. The reading never stopped. It just went underground, where nobody can help you carry it. But the reading is only half of what's in the box. Picture a table with 5 people at it. One of them is quietly furious about something and has not said a single word about it. Everyone else eats. You lose your appetite around the 2nd course, and you cannot tell anyone why, because officially nothing has happened. You drive home wearing someone else's mood like a coat you didn't choose. There's a name for that, and it's not mysticism. Emotional contagion. Researchers Elaine Hatfield and John Cacioppo showed that people automatically mirror the faces, voices, and postures around them in fractions of a second. Then they feel a small version of what they just copied. Automatic. There's no consent step in the process. On top of that sits something called empathic accuracy, studied for years by the psychologist William Icks. Some people are simply better at correctly reading what another person is feeling. That sounds like a straight upgrade until you look at what the research on it actually found. Being accurate about someone's inner life is not always good for the person doing the reading. Sometimes knowing exactly what they feel is the thing that hurts. And here's the specific version of this that other people never quite get. Your problem is not that you feel a lot. Plenty of people feel a lot. Your problem is that you can't always tell whose feeling it is. Where does their bad day end and your bad day start? You spend a shocking amount of energy on that question, and you usually answer it hours later, alone, in the car or the shower. Watch how small it gets. Someone you care about sends a 2-word reply. Fine, see you then. Nothing in there is hostile. But your stomach already made a decision about it. Now you're reading the previous message again, checking the punctuation, and you already know you're doing something ridiculous while you keep doing it. Which brings us to the part that explains the tiredness. 9 at night. You're home. Your phone is face down, and there are 3 unread messages from people you actually love. You aren't sad. Nothing bad happened. You're just offline. You boil water and stand there watching it and answer nobody. Later you'll feel guilty about the 3 messages, and you'll draft a long apology for a crime nobody reported. Here is why. Both of those jobs, the reading and the absorbing, run in real time at the speed of the room. Neither of them can be filed in real time. The sorting happens later, in silence, at your own pace. That's what the alone time is for. It was never about hating people. That's the whole reason the introversion piece gets misunderstood. It isn't shyness. It's recovery time for work you already did in public. So you go quiet for an evening, and someone decides you're moody, flaky, hard to reach, difficult to make plans with. And you apologize for it, because from the outside it does look like withdrawal. It isn't. You're standing in the hallway at midnight unpacking boxes you weren't allowed to open at the party. Now here's the part almost nobody says out loud, and it's the reason I wanted to make this one. The label can start costing you. You cancel something, and you hear yourself explain it with 4 letters instead of a sentence about yourself. You describe a whole friendship using type theory. You read one more article about your type instead of asking yourself a question you've been avoiding for a year. And there's an awkward fact underneath it. A large share of people who retake this kind of test after a few weeks come out with a different combination of letters than they started with. So ask yourself something honest. If your letters flipped next Tuesday, would you need less silence after a party? Would the friend's boyfriend suddenly be a great idea? No, of course not. The need was never issued by the test. There's a heavier version of this too. If rare is why you matter, then rare is something you have to keep proving. And an ordinary week starts to feel like a small failure. You start protecting the identity instead of the person. You take on the emotional labor because your type says that's who you are. When the real answer that day is that you're tired and you'd like someone to ask you a question for once. The box got so interesting that you stopped checking what's inside it. So let's put this down plainly. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not rare in some cosmic way, and honestly, rarity was never the interesting part. What you are is a person who reads patterns without receipt, someone who absorbs other people's weather without being asked, and who needs silence afterward to sort out which parts belong to you. That combination is real. It's demanding. It is not a personality flaw, and it is not a superpower either. It's a running cost. And the 4 letters? They're marker on cardboard. You could wipe them off with your thumb tomorrow, and the weight in your arms would be exactly the same. The weight was there before anyone gave it a name. It will be there after the name goes out of fashion, which means you're allowed to put the box down, in the hallway, unopened, go to bed, and it means you can stop auditioning for a category. You never had to be 1% of anything to be worth the room you were standing in. One more honest thing before I let you go. Sometimes the pattern you're reading is your own history and not their intention. Being right often is not the same as being right always, and your intuition deserves a question mark now and then. That's not a flaw in you. That's just the difference between reading a room and reading a mind. If this one found you, do me a favor. Tell me in the comments which half costs you more, the reading or the absorbing. Just one word is fine. I read those, and it's usually the closest thing to a conversation this whole strange job gives me. And tonight, when the house is finally quiet and you're standing in the kitchen doing nothing, remember what that silence actually is. Not you being broken, you unpacking. Subscribe to keep decoding yourself, and I'll see you in the next.